Hello and welcome to this edition of Let's Talk About It with my awesome guest today, Mr. Dwight Thomas, Master Chef, who's in the house. He's going to teach us a little bit about cooking, and we're going to actually get to taste some of his delicious culinary skills. Right?
Yes.
Yes? All right. Now, what are you cooking up there, Dwight?
This is penne pasta Alfredo with grilled vegetables and julienne vegetables and grilled chicken.
Okay, okay. Now, I know
Homemade Alfredo sauce.
Homemade Alfredo sauce.
Homemade
So this isn't nothing that's out the box, in other words.
Not out the box.
You created this.
Created it.
You know, I want to ask you, how did you get involved in this?
Just by accident, actually.
By accident?
By accident.
Okay.
As a youngster, I would take part-time jobs. I started off at River Oaks Country Club.
Uh-huh.
And there was a gentleman there that taught me his recipes. But he wouldn't teach anyone else his recipes.
Okay.
Later, I left the country club to go to work for Benihana's.
Okay.
And
Benihana's, now that's the place where they cook in front of you
they
and
throw the knives up
and throw. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
The hottest profession on earth.
Yeah. All right. Literally.
Literally. And a guy came in that started the Benihana's chain and asked me if I wanted to work for Benihana's. So I went to work for them. They taught me how to throw the knives and do the volcanoes and all the little things, the tricks of the trade.
Is that right? Okay.
But at the same time, the people from River Oaks continued to call me because I had the only recipes that they knew to do the certain types of foods that they wanted.
Okay.
So eventually, it progressed and progressed and progressed until I became a caterer.
Really?
Just by accident.
Just by accident. You know, it's amazing the things that can happen just by accident. When we don't even plan them out in our lives, it just happens. But a lot of times, that's when we're successful. With those things that just happen to happen in our life. I'm looking at this food, and it's like, I want to just stop in right now, get a plate, and tear it up. And it smells absolutely delicious. I wish you guys could actually smell this through the lens of the camera. Now, Dwight, how long have you been in catering?
On and off since 1977.
Since 1977. So that would be like what, well over 4 decades?
Yes.
Actually, wow. Now, some of the people that you've actually had an opportunity to cook for might be who?
Now I've got to go back in this feeble brain of mine.
Oh boy. Now you've done some cooking for the Bushes, I think, at some point in time, right?
Yes, I did a party for them. I actually did the Bush's secretary's wedding.
The Bush's secretary's wedding. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
I've done the governor. I've done quite a few artists. I used to be the backstage party person for MCA Records.
Okay.
So I got to do the Reba McEntires and the Enrique Iglesias and the Third Eye Blind, which...
and not only that, but a lot of political, like Sylvester Turner too. You've done some things with Sylvester Turner as well, right?
Quite a few times.
Quite a few times. Okay.
I've done the mayor in East Parker.
In East Parker. Now, didn't you just come from the National Black Caucus, was it?
Yes, we did the National Black Caucus in Austin.
Okay. Now, that's a huge job.
Yes, it is. 650 guests per event.
650 guests per event. So, needless to say, you have to have a huge staff to facilitate that type of thing, right?
Yes, you do. That particular one, we didn't really have the staff because we only did the decor for it. We don't always do food.
Okay.
We also do decor. We're full event planners.
Okay.
And caterers.
Is that right?
That's what makes it difficult sometimes because you have to do both.
Mm-hmm. So you're well-rounded. You cover the full spectrum.
We cover the full
So
spectrum.
not just what we aesthetically see, but what we also can eat as well.
Correct.
All right. So you basically just beautify the event.
Correct.
All right.
Correct. We do what they call wall patterns, flow patterns, and we do specialty items like theme parties and like luau's and
Really?
and Mardi Gras parties.
Okay.
It's just as far as your mind can go, we can go.
Okay. So it takes a creative person to do that.
I wouldn't know about creative. You just have to do your due diligence and make sure you have everything in order.
Okay.
It takes planning.
Takes planning. Now tell me, what is it that I can actually participate in here today? I want to put my hands on literally everything that I see.
I'll give you an opportunity to put your hands on something. I'm going to let you make a salad.
I get to make a salad, y'all.
This is a specialty salad. And this is soon to become your favorite salad.
Is that right? You sound mighty confident there.
I want you to take this and toss it in there.
All right. So I'm going to take this. You guys can see this here. And now, what exactly is in this
That is
dish?
a multitude of things. You've got cranberries, fresh cranberries. You've got red, green, and yellow bell peppers. You've got squash. You've got jicama. You have pecans. You have bacon bits and chopped eggs.
Wow. What an
And that should
array.
be enough.
That should be enough?
That should be
All right.
enough.
And then
You just toss that with those 2 spoons you see right there.
right here.
Right
There's one
there.
there and another one here. All right, so this is really interesting. I might have to change my career after today's show. I may become a culinary artist. Am I tossing that
And
properly?
And that's just about enough.
Is that okay?
And after that, we're going to add this fat-free raspberry vinaigrette.
Mmm.
The way that we do this is we'll add it along the sides. So
Okay.
when you do toss it again, it'll go from the sides to the middle, and then you can toss it again.
So there's an art to that.
Yes, it is, because if you pour directly on it, sometimes it oversaturates it.
And you know what? When I'm at home and I'm making a salad, I always pour the salad dressing right in the center of my salad. So I just learned something.
Okay. and
Taking
there
it
you go.
around the bowl is the best way to do it. And then we can
Toss
retoss.
it again. Toss it again.
All right, for the retossing of the salad. All right, I want to know what kind of grade I'm getting here. Am I getting an A or a B, or am I passing? What am I doing?
You look like you're doing a fine job to me. We
Uh-huh.
may have to keep that red coat on you for a while.
Oh man, let's make that happen. Let's make that happen.
Okay, and that
this is
should be
good.
and that should be suffice.
And it's very fragrant too. You guys are going to really enjoy the taste of this salad. I know just from the smell of it that it's going to be amazing on your palate.
And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have you
Okay.
to serve your guests
Mm.
some hors d'oeuvres.
Oh, really? I get to
This
serve.
is a chicken friand
Okay.
with a roasted raspberry chipotle sauce.
Fantastic. So I'll actually let them come up and get a taste,
They can actually come up
or
and
do
get a
I
taste.
walk out and give them a
Well,
taste?
actually, you can walk out and give them a taste. Generally, we serve it on silver trays, garnished silver trays.
Oh, okay.
And all you do is you take it, dip it in the sauce once,
Okay.
and you hand it to your guests.
Oh, I do that.
You hand it to your guests.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I'm going to step out for just a second. We'll be back, and he's going to continue to cook over here while I take this out to my guests. All right. There you go. How do you feel about that? All
What we're
right.
going to do now is we're going to dress this plate.
Just smack with me. There we go. Hello. Lick it. Lick it. All right. Young man, you like to try this? There you go. You are pretty well. All right, Miss Joe. You like to try this? There you go. Oh, and there you got it. Making it quickly. All right, fantastic. And Elizabeth, we're going to make sure we have one of these left for you. And all that. Oh, but she says she wants it now. There you go. All right, fantastic. Fantastic. So what are you doing over there now, Mr. Thomas?
Now, I am getting ready to serve you on this particular platter here. As we dress this, we're going to serve you the Thai ribs. Quite a popular entree that everyone seems to love.
Mm.
They're St. Louis ribs. It's about a 5-step process that you have to do these ribs in.
A 5-step process.
5-step process. It's not something you can do overnight.
Is that right?
It takes a little while to do these.
Mm.
But I guarantee they're worth your weight.
I believe it. I absolutely believe it. They look as if they just fall off the bone.
They're pretty tender.
No, I noticed you're putting those in a pattern. And basically you are creating art?
Actually, you want to make your food as appealing to the eye
Mm-hmm.
as to the mouth.
Okay, okay. Now, does it take special training to learn how to, I guess you would say, dress the plate?
Well, you have to teach yourself. Well, you have to be taught how to dress a plate.
Okay.
Unless it comes naturally to you,
Mm-hmm.
it takes a little time.
Okay, okay.
This is your double-crusted roast beef.
The double-crusted roast beef.
Now,
Okay.
this is actually a ribeye,
Is that right?
Angus ribeye.
Angus ribeye.
Angus ribeye.
Now, the Angus is one of the top,
It's one of your better meats.
one of your better meat. What is actually the best meat, or is there such a thing
Well,
as
they've
a
got
best
a
meat?
Angus is probably your best meat, but you've got another meat that comes out of Japan called Kobe beef.
Kobe beef.
But most people that advertise Kobe beef really don't have Kobe beef, because Kobe beef is not allowed in the United States.
It's not allowed in the United States.
So
Kobe
if
beef.
someone
Really?
is telling you that they're serving you Kobe beef, they're lying to you.
Mmm. So what is the texture of that like?
It's all grain-fed beef.
Okay.
All grain, no preservatives. They're carefully monitored.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a whole lot of difference between Kobe beef, I don't believe,
Okay.
and Angus beef.
Yes, okay.
It's kind of like a filet mignon.
Mm.
In America, we think it's the finest steak, but in actuality, it's not. The finest steak is a ribeye. In Europe, the ribeye is known as the king's cut.
Is that right?
But we're so stuck on the name, filet mignon. It sounds so
Because
good.
it sounds wonderful, yeah.
But the more tasty piece of meat is actually
The
the
ribeye.
ribeye.
Is that because of the way that it's marbleized?
That's correct.
With the fat that's in between the meat and this, that, and the other, it enhances actually the flavor of the ribeye. Is that right?
That's correct. And it's one of the very few pieces of beef that is kosher.
Really?
Kosher, most people don't understand the nature of what kosher means.
Mm-hmm.
Back half of the animal is
Okay.
non-kosher. Front half of the animal is kosher.
Really? Now define what kosher is so that the audience could know.
Kosher means purified. It's something that came from the Jews.
Okay.
Kosher in the back, non-kosher means you shouldn't eat it.
Mm-hmm.
But
People do anyway.
People do anyway. But the front half is kosher. The
Okay.
back half is non-kosher.
So are you saying that the front half is pure and the back half is not? I'm just wondering.
What I'm saying is, that's the way they perceive it.
Okay.
If you put the right heat on anything,
Mm-hmm.
it's edible.
Gotcha.
It's edible.
All right. And speaking of heat,
That is if it's not diseased.
of course, with that being taken into consideration. Now, speaking of heat, it's important to have certain temperatures for certain foods too, right?
Yes, it is.
So that they don't spoil or go bad during
Correct.
dinner or when they're going to be served.
Correct.
So, what's one of the rules that one might have for temperatures with food?
Well,
What's safe?
it's all depending on how you're getting ready to eat your food.
Okay.
There are certain criteria that you are going to always follow. You wouldn't serve an egg that's undercut. You wouldn't serve pork that's undercut.
Mm-hmm.
Now your beef, some people almost eat it raw sometimes.
Right.
Very,
right.
very
That's when,
rare.
that's when you see that red,
The
and
reddish
blood
in
and
it.
so forth.
And that's permissible. But it's not really a safe thing to do when you're serving the elderly and children,
Okay.
because their food should be cooked well.
Mm-hmm.
Especially children, because they've not built up the immunities and things like that.
Right. Got you.
Another thing, when you're transporting your food,
Okay.
you should always transport your food at proper temperatures,
Mm-hmm.
because you're just waiting on an accident that's going to
To
happen
happen.
eventually.
Got you.
The scariest part of food transportation to me is things like family reunions. When you have people traveling from long distances
Mm-hmm.
with food that's not regulated inside of cars, and then they're joining it all at one spot. You don't
Okay.
know where the contamination came from.
Got you.
And it's a serious matter. A lot more serious than people think it is.
Okay.
And it's not the same food that it used to be 20 years ago. There was a time when you could put an egg out on the counter and leave it out all day long.
And it'd be fine.
It'd be fine, but you can't do that anymore. And it's because of what the animals are being fed.
Mm.
So with all of the different chemicals and the different strains of things that are being fed to the animal, it causes different chemical reactions. So we have to handle them a lot different than we did in the past.
Okay. Okay.
So, and that's the reason I encourage everyone,
right.
get the proper utensils, get the proper equipment to use when you're getting ready to serve food.
Gotcha.
I mean, don't cross-contaminate. You can't cook raw chicken
And take that same utensil
and
and
use
work with.
beef.
Okay.
Correct. So,
So how do you feel about buffet lines? I just have to ask this question.
well, it all depends if they're being maintained.
Okay.
The maintenance of a buffet line is crucial, especially when you see people bringing plates back that they've used before,
Mm.
things of the sort. Another thing, things like fountains.
Okay, the fountains, like when you go and get your soda out the fountain.
I'm
Okay.
not so much those type of fountains.
Not that
but
type?
Chocolate fountains, and like you're at a wedding and you see a punch fountain.
Yes.
When you see someone take a glass and stick it underneath the fountain, then they drink out of the glass, and then they go back to get another drink out of it.
Mm.
Well, let's just say they put the drink underneath it. Just a little bit of the juice hits the side of the drink and rolls back down in the fountain.
Okay.
In just a few minutes, you've drank after everyone in the entire function.
So you
And there's-
contaminated the
You
drink.
contaminated the drink,
Okay.
and pretty much it's almost impossible not to. And you've got too many things now. You've got meningitises and hepatitis and
Right.
just so many elements at work here now that you have to watch what you're doing when you do those kind of things.
So I guess it would be safe that each time you want to get a drink from the fountain, that you actually get a new cup
Correct.
and then
Correct.
go back and
I would tell
replenish your drink.
anyone that had a fountain like a chocolate fountain,
Mm-hmm.
don't even participate in it if you don't have an attendant there.
Really?
You'll
Okay.
need an attendant because what he needs to do or she needs to do
Mm-hmm.
is monitor what happens to the fountain.
So it's a safety measure.
It's a safety measure.
Mhm. And safety is definitely important. All right. Now, tell me, what is next here? Are we ready to eat?
We are ready to eat.
All right, fantastic.
All right.
Well, you know what? We're going to take a pause for the cause, grab a bite to eat, and we're going to be back with more of Let's Talk About It with my wonderful guest, Mr. Dwight Thomas of A Prime Affair. All right, so we'll see you guys back in just a moment. Mr. Thomas, man, this guy has done an amazing job today here on the set of Let's Talk About It, showing us his culinary skills. This food was simply delicious.
Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it.
Fantastic, man. You know, we got to have you back on the show, Dwight.
Be glad to.
All right, we got to have you back on the show. Now, I have a glass of wine here, and I know that different wines go with different types of food. This is actually a Merlot. What type of food would actually go with this type of wine, with a dark wine, with a Merlot?
Heavy red meats and pasta.
Heavy red meats and pasta. Okay, now heavy red meats, would that be like what? Give me an example
Prime
of
rib, T-bone steak.
prime rib,
Any type
T-bone
of-
steak.
Any type of steak. You can serve it with lamb.
Okay,
You can serve it with different crusted breads by itself.
with different crusted breads
breads
by itself. Is that right?
That's correct. With
Okay.
wine, cheese, as most wines will.
Okay, okay.
And there's just so many applications for wine.
Mm.
When you become a true wine lover, you have guides. You
Okay.
will walk around with guides. And those guides will tell you what food that it complements most. Generally, your white wines complement your seafoods and your sauce foods.
Really? So now, so like your fish, your shrimp,
Correct.
things of that nature
It enhances
would
the
work,
flavor of it.
would work well. Okay,
Correct.
so it actually affects your palate.
Correct. It
And-
opens your palate to taste food.
Okay,
There's two things that generally open your palate. One's a sorbet,
a
and
sorbet.
another is a wine.
Okay, and now generally sorbet is used to cleanse the palate. Is that right?
Correct. It is.
Okay,
But it
that-
prepares your tongue to taste.
okay, okay, interesting, interesting. So the sorbet actually cleanses the palate to make your taste buds more acceptable to the flavors.
Right. More
Would that be
aware
a
of
good-
what's coming to them.
More aware of what's coming to them. You know, we are learning so much on this segment today. I hope you guys are getting educated as well as myself on this particular segment. Now, a moment ago you had the
Prime rib.
prime rib, but give me the name. It's actually your specialty, right?
Well, we've got so many specialties that I hate to say one thing is my specialty.
Okay, so it's one of
One of the specialties. We've got about 350 menu items.
about 350. So you can't go wrong.
No, can't go wrong.
Whatever anybody wants, a prime affair can definitely take care of it. Is that right?
We cater to you.
You heard that. We cater to you. Fantastic. Now, Dwight, what's next for you? I know you're always doing big things. Every time I turn around, you're doing something different. You're flying here, you're flying there. You were in Hawaii last week. I know you just did the Black Caucus the week before that. You've worked with a little bit of everybody. What's next for Dwight?
That's kind of hard to say. Wherever God leads me is where I'm going.
Oh, wherever God leads him, that's where he's going. That's always a good answer. So that means you're open to whatever.
I'm open. I am open to suggestions. I think I'd like to put a line of hors d'oeuvres out.
Mm-hmm.
At one point in time, I considered opening an hors d'oeuvre restaurant. Hors d'oeuvres and hors d'oeuvres alone.
Really?
Yeah. I wanted a contemporary style restaurant. Different colors, different hors d'oeuvres, different drinks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, lighted wine glasses.
Yeah.
Just a different concept, something that's fun, and at the same time, you're not relegated to eating just heavy meals.
Got you.
Because sometimes people just want a snack, but they want a snack that's heavy enough to hold them,
Mm-hmm.
but not something that's just going to take them out of the element of going out to have a good time. Because
Right.
sometimes when you eat too much,
Mm-hmm.
makes you a little sluggish and you want to go home and go to sleep.
Yeah.
So I believe if we put a concept in where you can have just hors d'oeuvres, then you can regulate how many of those you want to eat. If you serve someone a big steak, generally they feel like they're obligated to finish the steak or pack it home.
Okay. Okay.
But if you can eat a few hors d'oeuvres, you can determine how much you want to eat and when you want to stop.
Right. You know, speaking of steak, for myself, there's times I've gone to restaurants and I've gotten a big steak and I have some left, but you know, it never tastes the same the next day. Why is that?
You may be getting cheap steak.
Might be getting cheap steak.
Yeah, it all depends on the animal. It all
Okay.
depends on the animal and how it's prepared.
Okay, that makes all the difference.
It makes all the difference in the world. Fresh meat, if you serve fresh meat in one day, generally you could actually refrigerate it or freeze it again.
Okay.
But once a piece of meat has come to the person and it's been frozen,
Mm-hmm.
you really can't freeze it anymore because it breaches the integrity of the beef
Mm.
or whatever the meat is.
Okay.
So that you have to keep in mind. When you start talking about chickens and beefs and lambs,
Mm-hmm.
they generally should be frozen only one time.
Is that right?
After that, you will know the difference in it.
Now, with most restaurants, isn't it frozen prior to getting to the restaurant?
It all depends on the restaurant. Now, it's one thing, if you're talking about seafood,
Mm-hmm.
seafood has to actually be frozen before it's allowed to be sold in the American market.
Okay.
Most people think if you go down to Galveston or Kima somewhere and you get seafood off the boat, that you should be able to come home and eat it immediately. Well, there are certain bioorganisms that should be brought to certain temperatures, cold-wise,
Mm-hmm.
so you can consume them.
Is that right?
Now, if you eat a fish straight out of the Gulf, you risk possible contamination.
Is that right? And just me and you know, my layman's perspective, I would think fresh out of the ocean would be like ideal. But I just learned that it wouldn't be.
Not always the best.
Not always the best. Wow.
When you start talking about things like shrimp and shellfish,
Uh-huh.
every restaurant that sells shellfish to the public
Mm-hmm.
has to keep records on it for 90 days. It's a mandate by law.
Is that
And the
right?
reason for that is because the contamination of it is at a higher rate than it is fish. And they've got to know the source from which it comes. You're not allowed as a restaurant
Mm-hmm.
to purchase shrimp off the side of the road when you see people. You've got to keep accurate records of where it comes from.
Okay. Okay. That is interesting.
So it's a little more regulation than most people realize,
Yeah.
but it has to be done because you've got to protect the general public.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So-
Now tell me this. When you say shellfish, some people don't know what shellfish is. Describe exactly what shellfish is. I know, but I would like for the audience to know.
Any crustacean, shrimp, crab, crawfish,
Would oysters be in that family?
oysters,
Okay.
clams, anything that's a shellfish.
Okay. Okay.
And by the way, oysters,
Uh-huh.
it's like playing a Russian roulette when you're eating a raw oyster.
But you know that's so common.
Yes, it is. But most of the time, when people eat raw oysters, they drink alcohol behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the best way to eat a raw oyster is to drink alcohol behind
Because it would
Because it has a certain percentage of fecal content in it.
okay. And so the alcohol will actually kill.
It will actually kill the fecal content, and sometimes not all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something you've got to be mindful of.
It's a hit and
when you're
miss kind of
eating
thing, huh?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Wow.
It's a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And they tell you in your health department classes, don't serve raw oysters.
Really.
They'll tell you that.
And it's such an aphrodisiac, you hear people say, and everybody wants a raw oyster. I'm not one of those people.
Myth.
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 Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't believe it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I don't eat them anyway. So.
Nor do I. You know, this has been such a interesting segment, Dwight, and not only was it interesting, but it was very educational.
Well, glad you learned a few things.
Yeah, so you've actually passed on some knowledge to my guests, man. I appreciate
Oh,
that.
well, thank you.
Not to mention, I am certainly full for the rest of the day. I have thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I know you guys have enjoyed yourselves, the ones that are here in the studio audience today. This has been a heck of an experience. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Let's Talk About It with my wonderful guest, Mr. Dwight Thomas of A Prime Affair, as much as I have. And of course, for more information on Dwight Thomas,
You can always phone me at 281-827-1778 if I don't answer the phone. someone will get with you.
All right.
Email address, the letter U, the letter R, prime, P-R-I-M-E, at sbcglobal.net.
Now, one more time for the people that are like me that can't write all that down at one time.
281-827-1778. U-R prime at sbcglobal.net. I'll contact Mr. Phelps here. He can always catch me.
There you go. And you know, you guys can reach us at Let's Talk About It 12tv@gmail.com. That's Let's Talk About It 12tv@gmail.com. All right, folks, until next time, we'll see you then.